Hello and welcome to McKinsey Live. I'm Lucia Rahili, McKinsey's editorial director and your host for today's event on Agentic AI and how to move beyond discrete pilots to impact across the enterprise-wide. Before we start, quick heads up that our goal with this series of live events is to give you the chance to engage with our experts on our latest research. Obviously, asking questions is a big part of that. So if you are registered for this event, please do not hesitate to use the Q&A functionality within your live stream. Given the topic, I will caveat that we have a very large group in the audience today, but we will take your questions throughout the session and answer as many as time allows. Joining us today are two of our experts on agentic AI and technology more generally, Klemens Hjartar and Dave Kerr. Klemens is a senior partner, and he is the global leader of McKinsey Technology, where he supports prominent companies embarking on digital transformations across a range of industries: tech, media, financial services, advanced industries, private equity, and so forth. Klemens is based in Copenhagen. And Dave is a partner of McKinsey's London office. He leads the firm's software, cyber, cloud, and work in the Asia Pacific region, as well as their largest technology deliveries from Build by McKinsey. Dave also works with a range of clients across industries to develop new products and services using the best of modern engineering practices and cloud-native technologies. He is also a passionate open source developer, tech blogger, and writer, and you can find his book, Effective Shell, on Amazon. Dave and Klemens, welcome to McKinsey Live.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Lucia.
We're thrilled to have you both together with us today. Let's get rolling. So GenAI has obviously had a seismic effect on the ways that organizations engage with technology on the day-to-day, and also an incredibly rapid one. Our most recent global survey on AI showed that more than 3/4 of companies now use AI in at least one business function. That's up from about half the year previous. Klemens, let's start with some context. Give us the your best high level, quick and dirty on the state of AI today.
Thanks, Lucia. So let's get into it. So this is a really interesting time in technology. The emergence of GenAI and agentic technologies has been a real inflection point in the technology history. If you think about it, we have a software and cloud industry that is probably around 900 billion in 2025. It is growing from 200 billion 10 years ago, and it's expected to land somewhere close to 4,000 billions in 10 years from now. So it's an immense growth rate. And this technology shift is monumental. Everybody in the industry is jockeying for position. So kind of the environment right now feels like a battle. So everything is up for grabs. The business model of SaaS is something kind of that is being discussed. The productivity promise in the companies is kind of significant. The whole drivers of traffic to e-commerce is bound to change. The interaction model and the consumer's perception or kind of expectation in how they want to be served is changing. So this year 2025 is really special time, and we can also see that in the behavior in the industry. We are really kind of in this place where we are kind of jockeying for positions, and the enterprises are gearing up kind of their projects in 2025 going into 2026. It's very interesting time.
Great. So Klemens, the discourse on AI, lots often toggles between peril and promise, or between challenges and enthusiasm. And on the challenge side of the ledger, we're increasingly seeing headlines about AI not yet translating into tangible economic results. You're out there talking to leaders every day. Why aren't organizations seeing AI translate into more value, in your view? Why this paradox?
So we are seeing a sequenced kind of action here. So we are seeing like a massive growth in some of the most easy use cases. If you think about the consumer ChatGPT that we all use every day now, that is the largest part of this market by far. The second big use case is the whole software creation process, which is is quite kind of deterministic and kind of well documented, and we are seeing significant of traction there. But the story is changing during 2025. 2025 is a year where we begin to see a real shift. Kind of the top 20% of companies are beginning to see real traction, and they are setting very ambitious budget already for 2026. So we're seeing it in technology budgets. We're seeing it in selected uh, areas of pilots, and we are seeing the companies that have had a significant number of pilots. Sometimes, and I'll talk about companies that have more pilots than Lufthansa. They're consolidating these efforts and saying we have some really big bets that we are going to consolidate around. So we are beginning to see the leading companies move, and we think it's going to be very important to be in on that race. It is like being in the Tour de France, missing out of the peloton. If you're not kind of in the race, it's going to be difficult to catch up. And in the last technology revolution, we can statistically prove that being a late mover was a bad strategy. So this is beginning to happen now. And but why don't we of talk a little bit about kind of what are the use cases and how we are seeing them shift?
Yeah, let's do that. So Dave, let's bring you in here, and turn to you on the question of agentic in particular, and the way it's going to intersect with, or sort of augment the roles that we humans play today in our respective organizations. Talk to us about what we might expect to change as agentic AI begins to gain traction and become more widely deployed.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, and I work with lots of different organizations at different parts of their journey. It's interesting. Klemens just said the peloton. If you missed the peloton, so we've got the status quo, which is people who are potentially becoming more familiar with things like ChatGPT. But even for the status quo, everyone else around you is going to start using AI to generate a lot of other stuff. So if you are just here as a worker doing a certain role, there's a lot more things that are actually going to be coming to you. So your productivity potential is actually probably going down from 1x because just more stuff is coming in. You need to process more stuff. Where a lot of people are and where a lot of people have been experimenting is the kind of augmentation of an individual's work. So the kind of co-pilot model where someone is coding and they're getting assistance from an agent, or someone's doing marketing and they're getting the collateral that they're building is being generated and so on. But these augmented processes, they don't really bring an enormous amount of value, especially compared to the investment in tech that's required to get them. The processes are already, somewhat optimized or have been optimized for years. We've been trying to improve these processes for a long time. So the real value that you can get from augmentation is realistically quite limited, and is probably only going to just counterbalance the fact that a lot more stuff is coming in. you're doing a lot more marketing because a lot more contracts are coming in, or you're reviewing a lot more code because a lot more code is being written by models. So you're just kind of keeping your head above the water. The organizations that I'm working with and we're working with who are really starting to do something exciting are the organizations who have been kind of rethinking processes entirely and building these digital agentic factories. So what do these factories mean? So you look at a process and you look at what it is you're actually trying to do and solve, work out what can be offloaded to agentic systems. So let's say that I'm working in a finance department and I'm doing reconciliation of purchase orders to invoices. That's a large volume of high toil work that actually follows a fairly predictable pattern. I have an invoice, I try to classify it, purchase order, I try to classify it. This is ideal to be distributed. But I don't want to just, I don't want to take that and kind of run the process as is. Instead, I want to get my experts to govern and organize this process, distribute it to a factory of agentic workers. And I think this is where it's particularly interesting, where a lot of people are not looking at this yet. It's not just running a factory or managing it. Every time this factory is running, with every iteration, there's an opportunity to improve your institutional data or processes to create feedback loops. And it's when you start to do that that you really start to see the opportunities.
Super helpful. And let's just, if we could, get a little bit more concrete about what that looks like in practice, Dave.
Super. So this is a screenshot of 3 iterations of a process that I've been working on with a financial institution, and it started quite simple. It was a development of payments technology process, which is a digital factory process. We have initial specifications, and then we get the agents to write technical stories, do technical designs, write code, do multiple iterations of the code, run tests, and so on. This kind of fans out. And then we do evaluations and bring this back in. The interesting thing about this is this factory approach actually runs overnight. It's a ton of work. And then that leaves the team of experts the entire day, the next day, to evaluate what's happened. And then this is where it gets really, really interesting. Not just evaluate what's happened, but actually take this as an opportunity to improve the institutional knowledge. If something doesn't happen the way it's supposed to, rather than just kind of correcting here or there, actually improving things like standard operating procedures, processes, documentation, and so on, so that the next time that factory runs overnight, the data is better, the standards are better. And that's the standards that are not just shared across the agents, but vendors, internal teams, and so on and so on. So with this factory running, not only are you actually running this process, getting the AI to work on much of the high toil tasks and distributing this across many, 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 many different actors, but you're also creating this flywheel that improves your institutional data and kind of has a compound interest effect. Every time you're running it, the data gets better.
Excellent. Klemens, do you want to add in here? Do you have a specific example you can share where you see this happening?
Yeah, happy to. So, what we will probably be showing you a little bit more technology in this call than you will typically see in a McKinsey call. But kind of just to take one concrete example that is driven from strategy in the large bank. Most of the large enterprises are now moving into doing this where it matters the most. In a normal bank, you would be spending up to 6 to 8% of the cost base on kind of financial crime. And the onboarding process is a very good kind of example of a long, complicated process. If you want to onboard a corporation, a wholesale kind of relationship into a bank, this is something that can take months. And this is a process where you have kind of very, very many kind of complex steps. It's everything from profile initiation, enrichment of kind of the customer profile, the initial risk assessment. You will have to do many complicated searches to kind of create the ownership structures of beneficial owners, kind of do all kinds of external, adversarial, media screening, internal blacklist lists. And there's a number of things that you actually have to kind of go through And this needs to be done at a very high accuracy. We need to call on humans in the right kind of process skills. But this is no longer a process where you're just using a tool to help you in individual steps. This is a real end-to-end transformation of a process. And this is complicated to do. And the industry has not yet given large enterprises all of the tools needed to do this. And that is why we are seeing in the very largest institutions, they are building their platforms to do these kind of things, to be able to create processes that kind of go across these things. And if you think about any enterprise today, and this is going to be the reality for any enterprise, they need to break out of siloed and horizontal implementation. They will all be relying on existing applications of kind of things that are doing their CRM, or things that are doing their ticketing systems or their ERP system. They will have a number of own developed systems. And for any end-to-end process, you will have to use resources from many of these things. And this is what has been holding back many large enterprises and has caused a little bit the lack that we have seen in adoption in businesses compared to consumers. This is just much more complex. And that has forced us to really innovate and say, how do we actually solve this problem? And how do you break it down? How do you make sure that it's secure? How do you make sure that you get the right evaluations? And kind of for something that really needs to be enterprise, there's an unsolved problem. And that's why we would like to introduce you this concept of the GenAI mesh. We will be showing you a bit of technology the next 5 minutes, but this is actually the realities of what is now being implemented in some very vast institutions. Dave.
Yeah, that's right. It's a topic that's close to my heart, and because maybe 6 months ago, even 12 months ago, a lot of the clients we were working with and the technologists I was working with were saying, should we use platform X or platform Y for our agentic work? And that was just never really the right question, because one platform, one technical solution, one product is never going to solve everything in a complex enterprise. Like Klemens mentioned, to break out of silos, you have to distribute work across many different systems. There is not, I'm talking from a tech perspective as well. There's never going to be one system that solves everything. In fact, the complex stuff, of course, is across many different systems. So this idea that I should pick one platform or another platform or kind of have a bake-off between their capabilities, it's kind of always absurd. And there's always ones that the software suppliers are always trying to push for. There's one software solution that will rule them all, but it's never one solution. It's how you bring all this stuff together, orchestrate it, govern it, make it observable, manage security across the stack. And if you're not thinking about this kind of distributed architecture, you're never going to be able to break out of these little silos. You're never going to be able to run workloads that span different parts of the organization. And that's what the idea is behind a kind of agentic mesh, which is really that the technical systems that we work with have always been big, complex, distributed systems. Message queues, CRM solutions, banking systems, all of these different things, the systems you're building yourself, the off-the-shelf solutions and so on. We've always been having to try and find ways to integrate them. As soon as we add agentic AI, we're just adding more nodes to this big, complex mesh, and we're making it less predictable and less deterministic. So obviously, more distributed and more complex. So I just recorded yesterday a little bit of kind of some of the stuff that I'm working on with my team at the moment that we're building with clients, which I think kind of brings this to life a little bit. It doesn't really matter the technical details of what you're about to see. We'll just kind of like briefly talk over it. But I think it's important to say that this is this is real, it's happening, it's what we're building with clients. And in no cases where it's valuable is it locked into one system. So what I'm seeing on the screen at the moment is Google Cloud. Google Cloud, I've loaded in a load of data, lots and lots of unstructured data. And I use this in my day-to-day work because I ask my agents that are running on Google Cloud to actually analyze some of the things I'm doing against protocol documentation, hundreds of pages of specifications. That's great. Google's very, very good at searching through lots of unstructured data. It's far easier than me building, say, RAG systems from scratch. But that's not going to solve all of my problems. It's great for the use case that I'm using it for. It's great for many other use cases as well. But I'm also running a lot of infrastructure. I create lots and lots of test environments. So I use Azure, I use AWS. So I've got AWS here. So I also run agents on AWS. I run them to manage my AWS infrastructure. AWS is very good at infrastructure, except in the last 48 hours. So I'm going to be using AWS agents as well. I'm going to be running things across different cloud environments. I'm going to be running things on data centers. I'm going to be running things on air-gapped environments. So what does that mean? It means that the tech I'm using, it needs to be portable and it needs to be standards focused. Because if I can't run things in different environments or if I can't interconnect things, I'm never going to be able to do anything that gets outside of these little silos, of these little horizontal solutions. To do something that's truly transformative, I need to span all sorts of different types of data. Much of my data is going to be resident in certain locations. I may not be able to move it around. That doesn't mean that all these different technologies, I have to pick and choose one or the other, but I need to be able to bring them together. And that means I need to be able to govern them. What we're seeing here is some open source technology that's available, and some of our clients are using, and many people are using. We open source this because we don't really think that the kind of software that integrates technology is as important as the methodology. Like people to go and use this software. This is treating different agents running across different hyperscalers and different environments as resources in a distributed system. We're actually using a technology called Kubernetes, which most enterprises have, which is really for running hardcore enterprise workloads, resource managed, isolated from a security perspective, governed from a security perspective. It's for managing kind of microservice chaos where people are building many, many different systems. We don't necessarily trust all of them. We need to govern them. We need to manage them. This provides a great kind of lowest common denominator environment to run agentic workloads across different cloud providers using all sorts of different technologies. And this has been incredibly powerful because, any institution who's working with this tech and trying to solve problems is going to be using a lot of different tech. And if you're boxed into just one thing or another, you'll always be dependent, beholden, and so on. And also you need to build this stuff. You need to get good at building this technology because you just can't buy these capabilities at the moment. They have to be built institutionally, which is something that, obviously super, super passionate about.
Great. Okay, that is so interesting to see sort of in action. And I think it points to this issue that you've both alluded to, that agentic really changes the calculus on AI transformation efforts, some of which, or many of which, may already have been in motion at different organizations. Klemens, you've said in your research that a reset is necessary to realize the value of AI at scale. Bring that to life a little bit for us.
So we see that to do this effectively, first of all, this technology is going to change our lives in the next 5 years. It is going to do fundamental shifts in many industries. It is something that we really have to go into, and for many industries, this is the main productivity promise that is on the horizon for the next 2-3 years. So embedding this in your strategy, how are you going to actually do this? What is the productivity promise that you have? What are the big areas where this can help you. That can be in how you deal with your customers, it can be in some of the major cost areas, or it can be in your innovation. Personally, the whole product creation innovation is probably where I'm most enthusiastic these days, and I think it's going to be a front runner. But also, if you're an e-commerce company, this is going to change everything around how customers are going to find you and potentially deal with you and pay. So kind of make the strategy, consolidate your bets, introduce some platforms that you work off. It is not going to work for any company to try to kind of innovate on 50 different platforms. To consolidate the bets. Do the workforce planning, kind of it's not like the world is full of people that have done this before, but you have to train some and bring in some. It is going to change the operating model. It's going to change how we task teams, but also kind of the size of teams are simply becoming kind of smaller. I don't buy into the future where we will have a workforce that is much smaller. I already see that we will be able to do so much more, but it is going to be a huge reinvention. This technology is difficult. It is not an easy technology. We begin to see patterns that this is a real extension of compute. So kind of using all of the best practices from enterprise technology that we showed you a bit in this call is going to be the core to kind of get it manageable and secure and safe. And then lastly, data is it can help you with structuring your data, but kind of ultimately the data that you put in is kind of what you get out. And then lastly, the whole adoption and the scaling paradigm is going to be super important. So treat this as a core element of a strategy through the prioritization and be ambitious. That would be my parting advice.
Thank you, Klemens. Okay, I'm mindful of time. I would love to fit in at least one question from our live audience. Let's take this one. Klemens, you mentioned that this is not an easy technology. What are some of the biggest risks that organizations should be watching out for as they embark on these transformations?
So, I mean, there are very concrete risks if you're relying on this technology that in nature is probabilistic, and you don't do kind of your implementation in a managed way. You can be putting kind of yourself and customers and employees at real risk. We have seen cases already where there has been physical risk on people because of bad AI translations. And therefore, kind of this needs to be implemented in a secure and evaluated way. And in all regulated industries, this will not fly if you are not having the right governance kind of policies, the right process control, both in process and out of process. So it's an amazing promise, but it needs to be done right.
Dave, anything to add quickly there?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of almost echo both points. One, be ambitious. You've got to go into prod and build things. It's the only way you're going to get good at doing this. But to treat every agent and AI system as a potential bad actor that is incredibly creative at finding ways to do things. Use the learnings we've had for a long time around how you think about zero trust systems, how you limit the blast radius of potential incidents, how you quantify the statistical correctness of a process, because a process doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be quantifiably better than what was there before, and the risk needs to be managed. And you will only do this by building things and getting it out there. So limit the blast radius, but force yourself to build something real.
Okay, that brings us to time. This was a super interesting discussion, obviously a hugely consequential topic. Klemens and Dave, thanks again for joining us. And as always, many thanks to all of you in our McKinsey Live audience for being together with us today. Please visit our website, McKinsey.com, for a replay of this event and of all previous McKinsey Lives, as well as for more on our research and work on Agentic AI. And a heads up that for our November event, we are going deeper into the dynamics of Agentic within a particular industry. Join us November 18th for Agentic AI and the Future of Travel with Jules Seeley and Kelly Ungerman. See you there. Have a great day or evening and be well.